There's a strange paradox in human nature. The harder you chase people, the faster they run. The more desperately you seek their attention, the less valuable you appear. The more you explain yourself, the less they listen. The more you try to convince someone to appreciate you, the more they begin to believe they don't have to. Yet the moment you stop chasing, something changes. People begin to notice your absence. They wonder why you're no longer trying to impress them. They become curious, not because you manipulated them, but because you finally stopped giving away your power. This is one of the deepest lessons found in Stoic philosophy. The Stoics never taught people how to manipulate others. They taught people how to master themselves. And here's the truth most people discover too late. The person who values themselves rarely has to beg others for respect. Most people spend years trying to become more attractive, more successful, more entertaining, or more agreeable so that other people will finally appreciate them. They think, if I say the right thing, if I do enough, if I'm always available, if I never disappoint anyone, then they'll finally value me. But life has a cruel way of teaching the opposite. The more available you become, the more people expect your availability. The more you sacrifice your own needs, the more some people assume you'll always sacrifice them. The more you tolerate disrespect, the more disrespect becomes normal. This is why Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that your character, not other people's approval, is the foundation of your peace. When your worth depends on someone else's attention, you're no longer free. You're negotiating your happiness. You're waiting for a text message to decide whether your day is good. You're waiting for someone's praise before believing in yourself. You're waiting for approval before making decisions. That's not confidence. That's dependency. And dependency always weakens your position. Imagine two people. The first constantly asks, "Do you still like me? Are we okay? Did I do something wrong?" The second quietly lives according to their values. They show kindness. They keep their promises. They improve themselves every day. But they don't chase validation. Who naturally commands more respect? The answer is obvious. Not because one person is playing games, but because one person has built a life that isn't dependent on another person's opinion. People often confuse confidence with arrogance. They're completely different. Arrogance says, "I'm better than everyone." Confidence says, "I know my value even if everyone doesn't see it." The Stoic never wakes up asking, "How can I make people admire me today?" Instead, they ask, "How can I become a better human being today?" That small difference changes everything. Because when your focus shifts from being admired to becoming admirable, your entire life begins to change. Ironically, this is often when people begin valuing you more. Not because you demanded it, not because you manipulated them, but because genuine self-respect is difficult to ignore. Strategy 1. Stop chasing people who keep walking away. One of the quickest ways to lose your sense of worth is constantly pursuing people who have already shown you they don't value your effort. Many people spend years trying to earn affection from someone who has repeatedly demonstrated indifference. They send another message. They apologize again. They explain themselves one more time. They give another chance. They hope that if they love harder, sacrifice more, or become better, the other person will finally recognize their value. But appreciation cannot be forced. Respect cannot be begged for. Love cannot be negotiated. The Stoics believe that suffering often comes from resisting reality. Reality tells you everything. If you're willing to observe it honestly, when someone consistently makes time for you, that tells you something. When someone consistently ignores you, that also tells you something. When someone only contacts you when they need something, that tells you something too. The wise person doesn't ignore patterns because they're attached to possibilities. They accept reality. Acceptance doesn't mean bitterness. It doesn't mean hatred. It simply means seeing people as they are instead of as you wish they were. There comes a moment when the strongest thing you can do is stop chasing, not to punish anyone, not to make someone jealous, not to win, but because you realize your energy is too valuable to spend convincing someone to care. Walking away from constant disrespect isn't losing. It's choosing your own dignity. And strangely enough, when people no longer have unlimited access to your time, your attention, and your emotional energy, Some begin to recognize what they took for granted, not because you engineered that outcome, but because absence often reveals value that constant availability hides. However, remember this important Stoic lesson. Never walk away expecting someone to come running back. Walk away because your peace matters. If they later recognize your value, that's their decision. If they don't, your decision was still the right one, because it wasn't based on changing them. It was based on respecting yourself. Strategy 2. Make your character your greatest strength. In today's world, people spend an enormous amount of time trying to improve how they appear. Better clothes, better photos, better image, better status. But the Stoics were interested in something far more lasting. Character. Appearance attracts attention. Character earns trust. Status attracts admiration. Character earns respect. Popularity attracts followers. Character earns loyalty. Ask yourself, if everything external disappeared tomorrow, would your character still make you valuable? Would people trust your word? Would they describe you as dependable? Would they say you're calm under pressure? Would they say you're honest? Would they say you treat people fairly? These qualities cannot be bought. They cannot be fake forever. And unlike fame or wealth, they don't disappear overnight. Epictetus taught that true freedom comes from focusing on what is within your control. Your character is always within your control. Someone can insult you. Someone can reject you. Someone can misunderstand you. But they cannot force you to become dishonest. They cannot force you to abandon your principles. They cannot force you to betray your integrity. Every day you choose who you become. And over time, that quiet consistency becomes more valuable than any attempt to impress others. People may not notice immediately. Character rarely receives instant applause, but eventually, it becomes impossible to ignore. You cannot force someone to value you. The more desperately you seek someone's approval, the less likely they are to appreciate what you bring into their life. Stoicism teaches the exact opposite of desperation. It teaches self-mastery. It teaches dignity. It teaches that your greatest source of power comes from becoming someone who no longer depends on external validation. Now, let's continue with 2 more strategies that quietly transform the way people perceive you. Not because you're trying to manipulate them, but because you become someone who respects yourself first. Remember this. People often recognize your value when they see that you recognize it first. That doesn't mean arrogance. It means refusing to treat yourself as if your worth depends on someone else's opinion. And that brings us to the next lesson. Strategy 3. Protect your time like it is your most valuable possession. Most people believe their greatest asset is money. Others think it's talent. Some believe it's intelligence. The Stoics believe something different. Your greatest asset is time. Once an hour passes, you can never buy it back. You cannot negotiate with yesterday. You cannot earn another version of this moment. Every day, you're spending the most valuable currency you possess. The question is, who are you spending it on? Many people give their time away without thinking. They instantly reply to every message. They cancel important plans to satisfy people who wouldn't do the same for them. They allow constant interruptions. They spend hours arguing with strangers online. They stay in conversations that drain them. They continue relationships that have become one-sided. Then they wonder why they feel exhausted. The answer is simple. They've treated their time as if it were unlimited. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that life is short, not to create fear, but to create urgency. If life is limited, then every hour matters. Every conversation matters. Every relationship matters. This doesn't mean becoming cold or unavailable. It means becoming intentional. Imagine 2 people. The first says yes to everyone. They're always available, always sacrificing their schedule, always putting themselves last. The second values their commitments. They respect other people's time, but they also respect their own. When they say yes, they mean it. When they say no, they don't apologize for having boundaries. Which person naturally appears more dependable? The answer is obvious, because people often value what is treated as valuable. If you constantly communicate that your time doesn't matter, don't be surprised when others believe you. But when you protect your time with wisdom, others begin to recognize that your presence is something to appreciate, not because you're pretending to be busy, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you've learned that your life deserves your full attention. Stop making yourself available to everyone. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that being constantly available makes them more important. In reality, it often has the opposite effect. When you're always saying yes, people begin expecting yes. When you're always solving everyone's problems, some people stop appreciating your effort. When you're always rescuing others, they may stop learning to stand on their own. This isn't kindness. It's imbalance. The Stoics believe that every action should come from wisdom, not impulse. Ask yourself, why do you always say yes? Is it because you genuinely want to help? Or because you're afraid people won't like you if you refuse? Those are very different motivations. Helping from generosity creates peace. Helping from fear creates resentment. Eventually, you'll begin feeling used, not because people are necessarily taking advantage of you, but because you've trained them to expect unlimited access to your energy. Healthy boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. You decide who enters. You decide when. You decide how much energy you can genuinely give. And the remarkable thing is this: people often begin respecting your time once you start respecting it yourself. Your attention is your life. Think about where your attention goes every day. Complaints, drama, arguments, people who constantly criticize, people who never appreciate you, people who only call when they need something. How much of your mental energy belongs to people who haven't earned it? Epictetus taught that where your attention goes, your life follows. Every minute spent obsessing over someone else's opinion is one less minute spent building yourself. Every hour spent arguing is one less hour spent learning. Every day spent trying to convince someone of your value is one less day spent becoming more valuable. This is why the Stoics refuse to become distracted by every insult. They understood that attention is precious. Guard it carefully. Don't allow every negative person to rent space inside your mind. Some people will misunderstand you. Accept it. Some people won't appreciate you. Accept it. Some people will criticize you. Accept it. Then continue your work, because your purpose is too important to pause every time someone has an opinion. Strategy 4. Master your emotions so no one can control you. Now we come to one of the greatest lessons in all of Stoicism. The person who controls your emotions controls you. Think about that carefully. If someone can make you angry whenever they choose, they have influence over you. If someone can ruin your entire day with one comment, they have influence over you. If someone can manipulate your mood through praise and criticism, they have influence over you. The Stoics refused to hand over that power. They understood something profound. Events themselves don't destroy your peace. Your interpretation of those events does. Imagine someone insults you. Immediately your mind wants revenge. You replay their words. You imagine arguments. You think of clever responses hours later. Meanwhile, the other person has probably forgotten the conversation. Who is suffering? You are, not because of their words, but because you continued carrying them. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. That doesn't mean pretending insults don't exist. It means refusing to allow someone else's behavior to determine your inner state. Emotional mastery isn't emotional suppression. The Stoics didn't deny emotions. They examined them. They paused before reacting. They asked, is this response helping me? Most people react. The Stoic responds. There's a difference. Reaction is immediate. Response is intentional. Reaction is emotional. Response is thoughtful. Reaction gives away power. Response keeps it. The pause that changes everything. Imagine someone speaks disrespectfully to you. Your first instinct is to respond immediately, but instead, you pause, just for a moment. That single pause changes everything, because now you're no longer acting from emotion. You're acting from choice. The pause is where freedom lives. Within that brief moment, you can ask, is this worth my energy? Will this matter next week? Am I responding to protect my ego or to uphold my values? Most arguments disappear when someone chooses not to react impulsively. Many relationships survive because one person paused. Many careers are protected because someone didn't send the angry message. Many regrets are avoided because someone waited. The Stoics understood that emotional discipline isn't weakness, it's strength. Anyone can lose control. Very few people can remain calm while everyone else is emotional. And those people become incredibly difficult to manipulate. Don't give people the satisfaction of controlling you. There are people who intentionally provoke others, not because they want truth, but because they enjoy reactions. They criticize, they mock, they insult, they spread rumors, they press emotional buttons. If every time they do this you explode, you've rewarded their behavior. You've taught them exactly how to control you. The Stoic takes away that reward, not through silence alone, but through composure. Calmness often frustrates people who expected chaos. Imagine someone trying to start an argument. Instead of shouting, you calmly answer. Or perhaps you simply smile and walk away. Suddenly, they've lost control of the situation. Because control never belonged to the loudest person. It belonged to the person who remained master themselves. True confidence doesn't need to prove itself. Many people mistake loudness for confidence. They think confidence means winning every debate, having the last word, proving everyone wrong. The Stoics saw confidence differently. Real confidence doesn't need constant proof. A mountain doesn't announce its height. The sun doesn't argue about its brightness. A person with genuine confidence doesn't waste energy convincing everyone they're valuable. They simply continue living according to their principles. They allow their actions to speak. This doesn't happen overnight. It requires practice. Every day you choose discipline instead of impulse. You become stronger. Every day you choose peace instead of unnecessary conflict. You become stronger. Every day you refuse to let someone else's mood become your mood. You become stronger. Eventually, your emotional stability becomes something people notice, not because you tell them, because they experience it. When people realize your value, here's something fascinating about human nature. People often don't appreciate consistency until it's gone. They don't notice your patience until they encounter impatience elsewhere. They don't notice your loyalty until they experience betrayal. They don't notice your kindness until they're surrounded by selfishness. But here's the important part. Never become kind simply so people will miss you. Never improve yourself hoping someone will regret losing you. Never build your life around proving someone wrong. Build your life because becoming a better person is worthwhile in itself. If others eventually recognize your value, wonderful. If they don't, you've still become wiser. You've still become calmer. You've still become stronger. And that's a victory no one can take from you. The lesson before we continue. So far, we've explored 4 powerful Stoic strategies. Stop chasing people who repeatedly walk away. Build a character that commands respect. Protect your time and attention. Master your emotions so no one can control your peace. Notice something about all 4. None of them require changing someone else. They all require changing yourself. That's why they work. Because your greatest influence begins with your own character, not with controlling another person's reactions. So far, we've uncovered 4 timeless Stoic strategies that naturally increase the respect others have for you, not through manipulation, but through self-mastery. The first was to stop chasing people who repeatedly walk away. The second was to build a character that commands respect instead of trying to impress others. The third was to protect your time as your most valuable possession. And the fourth was to master your emotions so no one else could control your peace. Notice the pattern. Every lesson has pointed inward because Stoicism has never been about changing other people. It has always been about transforming yourself. Most people spend their lives trying to influence everyone around them. The Stoic spends that same energy becoming someone who no longer depends on the opinions of others. Ironically, that is exactly what makes people pay attention. Not because you're seeking attention, but because people are naturally drawn to those who possess genuine inner stability. Let's continue with the next 2 strategies. These may be the most life-changing of all. Strategy 5. Become comfortable being alone. One of the greatest fears people carry is the fear of being alone. Not because solitude is painful, but because they've mistaken being alone for being unworthy. Think about how many people stay in unhealthy friendships simply Because they fear loneliness. How many remain in relationships where they're constantly disrespected because they can't imagine life without the other person? How many tolerate manipulation, disrespect, neglect, or emotional abuse simply because they believe having someone is better than having no one? The Stoics saw things differently. To them, solitude wasn't an enemy. It was a teacher. Marcus Aurelius spent countless hours in reflection, reminding himself that peace comes from within, not from constant company. If you cannot enjoy your own presence, you will eventually become dependent on everyone else's. And dependency makes you vulnerable, because now your happiness depends on someone calling you, texting you, inviting you, choosing you, approving of you. Imagine building your emotional life on something so uncertain. One delayed reply ruins your mood. One canceled plan makes you feel unwanted. One disagreement makes you question your worth. That isn't love. That isn't friendship. That's emotional dependence. The Stoics believe true strength begins the moment you discover that your peace doesn't disappear when you're by yourself. You begin to understand that solitude isn't emptiness. It's space. Space to think. Space to grow. Space to understand yourself. Space to become someone you're proud of. Stop fearing your own company. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you sat quietly with your own thoughts? No phone, no music, no television, no distractions. Just you. For many people, that sounds uncomfortable. Why? Because silence forces us to meet ourselves. It reveals the thoughts we've been avoiding, the fears we've been hiding, the insecurities we've covered with constant busyness. But this is exactly why solitude is so valuable. The Stoics believe wisdom begins with self-examination. How can you improve yourself if you never spend time understanding yourself? Most people know more about celebrities than they know about their own minds. They know what everyone else is doing, but they've never asked themselves, what kind of person am I becoming? Solitude gives you that opportunity. And here's the surprising thing. The more comfortable you become being alone, the less willing you become to accept relationships that destroy your peace. Because now, you no longer fear walking away. You know you'll be okay. You understand that being alone is not the same as being lonely. Loneliness is the absence of meaningful connection. Solitude is the presence of meaningful self-connection. There's a huge difference. People value what isn't desperate. Think about human nature. When someone constantly demands attention, calls repeatedly, needs endless reassurance, and panics whenever they're alone, people often begin feeling overwhelmed, not because a person is bad, but because desperation creates pressure. Now think about someone who genuinely enjoys their own life. They have hobbies, purpose, discipline, goals. They're kind and available, but they're not emotionally dependent. They don't panic when plans change. They don't lose themselves trying to keep people around. They enjoy relationships, but they don't require them to feel complete. Who naturally appears stronger? The answer is obvious. Again, not because they're pretending to be unavailable, but because they've built a fulfilling life that doesn't revolve around external validation. The Stoic never teaches isolation. Human connection matters. Friendship matters. Love matters. Community matters. But your identity should never depend entirely upon another person's presence. Because people come and go. Circumstances change. Life changes. If your peace depends on things that constantly change, your peace will constantly disappear. Instead, build your peace on your character. That remains with you everywhere. Strategy 6. Let your actions speak louder than your words. One of the easiest mistakes people make is believing they need to constantly explain themselves. Someone misunderstands you. You explain. Someone criticizes you. You defend yourself. Someone doubts you. You argue. Someone insults you. You immediately respond. Before long, you're spending your entire life explaining who you are. But here's a question. Why are you working so hard to convince people instead of simply becoming the person you claim to be? The Stoics believed actions reveal character far better than words ever could. Anyone can promise loyalty. Not everyone remains loyal. Anyone can claim honesty. Not everyone tells the truth when it's difficult. Anyone can call themselves disciplined. Not everyone wakes up and does the work. Words create impressions. Actions create trust. And trust lasts much longer. Stop announcing your plans. Many people love talking about what they're going to do. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to become successful. I'm going to change my life. But weeks later, nothing has changed. The Stoics prefer quiet progress over loud promises. Imagine planting a seed. You don't dig it up every day to show everyone it's growing. You water it. You protect it. You remain patient. Eventually, everyone sees the tree. Your goals should be the same. Spend less time announcing. Spend more time building. Less talking. More doing. Less convincing. More becoming. Because when your actions consistently support your words, people no longer need explanations. They see the evidence. Don't argue with every opinion. One of the fastest ways to waste your life is try to correct every misunderstanding. Someone thinks poorly of you. You rush to defend yourself. Someone spreads gossip. You chase every rumor. Someone disagrees with your choices. You write long explanations hoping they'll understand. But ask yourself, will convincing them improve your character? Probably not. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that people see the world according to their own experiences. Some people will misunderstand you no matter how clearly you speak. Some people have already decided who you are. No amount of explanation will change that. And that's okay. You are not responsible for controlling every person's perception. You're responsible for controlling your conduct. Your reputation belongs partly to others. Your character belongs entirely to you. Choose character. Every time. Consistency is more powerful than charisma. Many people mistake charisma for influence. Charisma attracts attention. Consistency earns respect. Imagine someone who keeps every promise, shows up on time, treats everyone fairly, works hard even when nobody is watching, remains calm during difficult moments, speaks honestly, lives according to principles. That person may never be the loudest person in the room, but over time, they're often the most trusted because consistency creates confidence. People know where they stand with you. They know your word has meaning. They know your values don't disappear when circumstances become difficult. That's real strength, and it's incredibly rare. Let success speak for you. One of the greatest Stoic lessons is understanding that your life is your strongest argument. You don't need to convince everyone you're disciplined. Lie with discipline. You don't need to convince everyone you're kind. Practice kindness. You don't need to convince everyone you're wise. Act wisely. Eventually, the results begin speaking louder than any speech ever could. Imagine two people. One constantly tells everyone how successful they are. The other quietly works every day. Years later, who earns deeper respect? Usually the one who spent more time building than boasting. Because achievement doesn't need constant advertisement. Real confidence doesn't demand applause. It simply continues moving forward. When people begin to notice, here's something interesting. When you stop trying to be noticed, people often notice you more. When you stop forcing conversations, people begin seeking yours. When you stop begging for attention, people begin respecting your boundaries. When you stop chasing approval, your confidence becomes visible, not because you become distant, not because you become cold, but because you become centered. People recognize emotional stability. It's rare. In a world where everyone reacts instantly, the calm person stands out. In a world where everyone argues, the thoughtful person stands out. In a world where everyone seeks validation, the person who quietly lives according to their principles stands out. That is Stoic strength. Remember the real goal. It's important to remember why we're discussing these strategies. The goal isn't to make people regret losing you. The goal isn't to make someone beg for your attention. Those outcomes may or may not happen. They are outside your control. The real goal is far greater. To become someone whose peace is no longer dependent on another person's approval. To become someone whose self-respect remains intact regardless of how others behave. To become someone who chooses virtue over validation. Because once you achieve that, whether people come back or not, whether they appreciate you or not, whether they recognize your value or not, you've already won. The more you value yourself, the less you need to convince others to value you. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant. It doesn't mean believing you're better than others. It means understanding your worth is not determined by how much attention you receive. Your worth is determined by the quality of your character. And that brings us to the seventh and most powerful strategy of all. Strategy 7. Never abandon yourself to keep someone else. This is where many people lose their power. Not because they're weak, not because they're incapable, but because they're afraid. Afraid of rejection, afraid of loneliness, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of losing someone they care about. So they begin making compromises. Small compromises at first. They stop expressing their real opinions. They tolerate behavior that hurts them. They ignore their own needs. They allow their boundaries to be crossed. They say yes when they mean no. They apologize for things that aren't their fault. They shrink themselves to make someone else comfortable. And little by little, they lose themselves. The tragedy isn't that someone else failed to value them. The tragedy is that they stopped valuing themselves. Marcus Aurelius understood something profound. You cannot live a good life if you constantly betray your own principles. Every time you abandon your values to gain approval, you pay a price. Every time you silence yourself to avoid conflict, you pay a price. Every time you accept disrespect because you're afraid of losing someone, you pay a price. The price is your self-respect. And once self-respect begins to disappear, everything else becomes unstable. Because confidence cannot exist without self-respect. Inner peace cannot exist without self-respect. Healthy relationships cannot exist without self-respect. The Stoic understands this. That's why they refuse to sacrifice their principles for temporary acceptance. Why people take you for granted. Let's talk about something painful. Being taken for granted. Almost everyone experiences it. You give, you help, you support, you sacrifice, you show up, you remain loyal, and eventually, it feels like nobody notices. Why does this happen? Sometimes it's because people become accustomed to what is constantly available. Think about the sun. It rises every morning. It provides light every day. Most people barely think about it, not because it isn't valuable, but because it's always there. Human beings often behave the same way. We become accustomed to certain people, certain acts of kindness, certain forms of support, and over time, appreciation fades. This isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's simply human nature. But here's where many people make a mistake. When they feel unappreciated, they begin giving even more. They try harder. They sacrifice more. They chase more. They overextend themselves. And ironically, the problem often gets worse. Why? Because they're trying to solve a self-respect problem with more effort. The Stoic solution is different. Instead of asking, how can I make them appreciate me? Ask, am I respecting myself? That's the question. Because when self-respect is present, boundaries become clearer. You stop overgiving. You stop rescuing everyone. You stop sacrificing your peace for approval. And people begin encountering a different version of you. A healthier version. A stronger version. A more balanced version. The power of walking away. There comes a point in life when every person must learn a difficult lesson. Not every relationship is meant to be saved. Some people hear this and immediately think Stoicism encourages detachment. It doesn't. Stoicism encourages wisdom. There's a difference. The Stoic values relationships deeply. Friendship, family, love, community. These things matter. But the Stoic also understands that not every connection is healthy. Some relationships become destructive. Some become manipulative. Some become one-sided. Some become toxic. And when you've done your best, communicated honestly, set reasonable boundaries, and nothing changes, you may need to walk away, not out of anger, not out of revenge, not to teach someone a lesson, but because you finally accepted reality. Epictetus taught that suffering often comes from demanding reality be different than it is. Sometimes people show you who they are. Believe them. Sometimes people repeatedly demonstrate how much they value you. Believe them. Sometimes people consistently disrespect your boundaries. Believe them. Acceptance isn't weakness. Acceptance is clarity. And clarity creates freedom, the most attractive quality in the world. People often ask, what makes someone truly attractive? Some say confidence. Some say intelligence. Some say success. Some say appearance. But there is a deeper quality that underlies them all: self-respect. Think about the people you genuinely admire. They probably aren't perfect. They likely have flaws, mistakes, weaknesses, but there's something about them. They know who they are. They don't desperately seek approval. They don't betray their principles for popularity. They don't chase people who continually reject them. They don't lose themselves in relationships. They don't need constant validation. There's a quiet strength about them. And that's because self-respect creates stability. People trust stable people. People admire stable people. People feel safe around stable people. Not because those people are perfect, but because they're grounded. They know their worth without needing to announce it. And that kind of confidence is incredibly powerful. Stop trying to be irreplaceable. Here's another mistake many people make. They try to become irreplaceable. They want everyone to need them, depend on them, miss them, think about them constantly. But this is a dangerous goal, because your value should never depend on being needed. It should depend on who you are. People may leave. Jobs may change. Relationships may end. Circumstances may shift. If your identity depends on being indispensable, you'll constantly fear loss. The Stoic chooses a different path. Instead of trying to become impossible to replace, they focus on becoming impossible to forget, not through manipulation, not through attention-seeking, but through character, through integrity, through kindness, through wisdom, through courage, through the way they treat people. Long after specific circumstances disappear, character remains in memory. That's what leaves a lasting impact. The ultimate Stoic revenge. Many people want revenge. Someone ignored them, rejected them, betrayed them, disrespected them, and they think, one day they'll regret it. One day I'll prove them wrong. One day they'll come back. Maybe, maybe not. The Stoics weren't interested in revenge. They were interested in growth. Marcus Aurelius understood that the best response to mistreatment wasn't becoming bitter. It was becoming better. Think about how much energy people waste imagining revenge. Hours, days, months, sometimes years, all focused on someone else's actions. The Stoic redirects that energy inward. Instead of asking, how do I make them regret losing me? Ask, how do I become the strongest version of myself? That question changes everything, because now your growth no longer depends on another person's regret. It depends on your own effort, your own discipline, your own choices, and that's where true freedom begins. The moment everything changes. There is a moment that changes a person's life, a moment when they stop chasing, stop begging, stop explaining, stop proving, stop convincing. Stop seeking approval from people who have already made up their minds, and instead, they begin investing that energy into themselves, into learning, into growing, into building, into healing, into becoming. That's the moment everything changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes kinder, not because everyone suddenly appreciates you, but because you've stopped giving away your power. You've stopped asking others to tell you your value. You've decided to discover it for yourself. And once that happens, something remarkable occurs. People's opinions lose their grip on you. Rejection hurts less. Criticism becomes easier to handle. Approval becomes less addictive. And peace becomes more consistent. Not because life is perfect, but because your foundation is stronger. The 7 strategies to remember. Let's bring everything together. 1. Stop chasing people who keep walking away. Respect cannot be forced. 2. Build character instead of seeking approval. Character lasts longer than popularity. 3. Protect your time and energy. Your attention is your most valuable resource. 4. Master your emotions. The person who controls your emotions controls you. 5. Become comfortable being alone. Solitude is strength, not weakness. 6. Let your actions speak louder than words. Results create credibility. 7. Never abandon yourself to keep someone else. Self-respect is the foundation of everything. These 7 lessons are not tricks. They're not manipulation tactics. They're principles. And principles create lasting change. The final Stoic lesson. At the beginning of this video, the title suggested, they will beg for you. But now you understand the deeper truth. The real goal was never to make someone beg. The real goal was never to make someone regret losing you. The real goal was never to manipulate people into appreciating you. The real goal was to become someone whose happiness no longer depends on whether they do. Because when you reach that point, you win. If people appreciate you, wonderful. If they don't, you continue growing. If they return, fine. If they don't, you continue moving forward. If they recognize your value, great. If they never do, your value remains unchanged. That is the Stoic mindset. Your worth is not determined by attention. Your value is not determined by validation. Your peace is not determined by approval. And your future is not determined by anyone else's opinion. It is determined by the choices you make every day. So stop chasing. Stop proving. Stop begging to be valued. Become valuable through your character. Become strong through your discipline. Become peaceful through your wisdom. Become free through your self-respect. And one day, you'll realize something extraordinary. The moment you stopped needing people to value you was the moment you became truly valuable. Conclusion: remember this. Never chase respect. Earn self-respect. Never beg for attention. Build a meaningful life. Never lose yourself trying to keep someone else. The Stoics understood that the strongest people are not the ones who control others. They are the ones who control themselves. And when you master yourself, you gain something far more valuable than admiration. You gain freedom. If this video helped you, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful lessons on Stoicism, self-discipline, emotional mastery, and inner peace. And before you leave, ask yourself this: what is one place in my life where I've been seeking validation instead of building self-respect? Think about it carefully, because the answer might change your life.